Well, thank you very much, Tim, but also thank you very much to John, because he's got in your minds probably all the reasons why, it's difficult for universities and companies to engage. First of all, I really feel I must, justify my free lunch today, and that's for two reasons. Is firstly, as you may have observed, I'm not actually Paul Naylor. I am his body double. Unfortunately, he's been called back to the TSB, so he couldn't be here today. But also, I have got some background which will explain about KTP. I started off my first degree in electronics, so I spent 10 years or so as a microwave engineer in radar sensors, and then what our friend from Vodafone probably can't even remember used to be called cellular radio base stations. I then joined senior management of a marine engineering company who was dedicated to laying submarine cables. So they had an R&D department. I was over in the strategy and business development side of the business. Their R&D department had people who were geotechnics, it had a naval architect, it had some mechanical engineers, all those sort of things, because that was what they were concerned with. But then photonics arrived, and suddenly they had to become systems engineers. They were, huge distances. They were spanning different fibre types. They had to do dispersion mapping. When they're pulling them up to mend them, they couldn't put the same cable back in. They had to then rematch the system. Suddenly they had a real strategic capability gap. And unfortunately, somewhere in the chief executive's mind, he remembered that I used to be an engineer. So he said, Jan knows all about this stuff. All right, so it's microwave, but it's a little bit higher in frequency. How hard can it be? So I suddenly found myself leading new product development and R&D department, but without that capability. And so in my career, I've done things like, framework. I've just done a framework 7, some research on, but I led a framework project some years ago, which is that little bit of grey hair there. And I've done consultancy work with universities and used some of the excellent summer courses and that sort of thing. But what we actually didn't know about was an ability where we could engage with the university but embed a new capability in our company, because we had a problem that was hitting us that day. We'd done case studentships and they were brilliant for some more blue sky longer term stuff, but even at the end of a case studentship you were still left with the problem of the business. How do you embed that knowledge in your company when somebody isn't there who actually understands it enough to do that? So I didn't know about KTP, so I wish I did, because that was exactly the problem we had. It would have solved it. So what is KTP? It is that, you're hungry. Why are you hungry? Is it you can't get to the market, haven't got enough money? But actually, what you realise is you're too dependent on other people in your company. What you need is a new capability that's going to be a new strategic long-term solution, not just solving today's problem. And that's what KTP is. It's about giving you that ability to fish rather than giving you a lift into the market to buy some. So, it's horses for courses, really. When should you be using KTP? So have a think about the problems, and if you're an academic, think about your research areas and how that could be applied. So you need that new capability to be more successful, but you may have resource problems both in terms of skill, ability, but also in terms of somebody that is ring-fenced to get away from the day job to actually implement this in your company. And also, you may have interesting conversations today with some of the academics, and some of the company problems may be being aired, but how do you actually make something happen because of those conversations? And you need to have a really good alignment between the research interests of the academic. They've got to get something out of it to remain engaged for the project to work in the company. And they have to fill the gap that you have in the company. And also, it does cost companies money to work on some of these projects. We've already heard about the opportunity costs, which could be huge. And there is some, monetary output you've got to put as well. So it's got to be close to market. It's got to deliver some cash back into the business, ideally in the time frame that you're working with the university. But also, we've heard from John really about how the different agendas is quite difficult to match up that relationship part. And what you have in knowledge transfer partnerships is actually a managed process. It's been proven that it's a real effective open innovation process. So right from getting the partners together and defining the project through to getting it approved and actually delivering it all the way through, it is a managed process with, somebody that is a technology and project management support, such as myself, that comes in, not paid for by the project in any way, completely, we're paid for by the Technology Strategy Board, who are the main sponsors. So we come and help facilitate that relationship and make sure that that shared agenda is delivered. So that's one of the uniques about KTP, is that you've actually got some help in forming the partnership and in the proposal writing. And, that really feeds into that 80 to 85% of proposals being successful. Because if you came to me today with, a partner you wanted to work with, a business problem, we could sit down and in probably about a quarter of an hour, I could tell you, actually, I think this would be a great KTP, let's move forward. Or, no, it doesn't sound quite right, let's not go to the bother of writing a proposal, but there's A, B or C you might want to consider as other alternatives, because at the end of the day, you've still got that problem, and that's the worst case scenario, is you try and find some, funding or a mechanism that's going to solve that problem, and if you don't get that approved, you've still got the problem, and you might have wasted 6 months or whatever getting there. So that's the real key in the brokering side of it. Once it's up and running, there is active project management. We meet every 4 months for strategic review. I would mentor the associate, which we will go on to talk about in a minute. And also, we monitor it post-award. So again, going back to the academics wanting their impact, you will get absolutely, gold-edged statement of impact and case study at the end of the project. Life's difficult, technology is difficult, the marketplace is difficult. You might be talking about a 3-year project here, and say 6 months, to put it together or whatever. Things will have changed in that time. The great thing about KTP, because once it's approved, we form a steering group, so we can redirect it if it's necessary, because, there might be another great opportunity that we don't want to do that actually. It makes more sense to go off and do that. We become the approval group to make that happen. So it's very flexible once it's actually approved. So some of the EU funding, you have to deliver exactly what was put out, 3 years before. And it is a partnership. We're looking for the 3 agendas. There's the academic that has particular expertise or knowledge. There's the company that has the need to exploit that. And how do you do that? You actually recruit an associate who is works in the company but supported by the academic to deliver and embed that knowledge in the company. And I saw a great thing the other day that said knowledge is actually understanding that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. And I think that this is what KTP is about. You may have the knowledge at the university, but the wisdom of actually applying it in the right way is something you want to develop as a joint partnership. So part of my job is to try and make sure that everybody gets what they originally wanted out of the project. And even in the proposal stage, there's a whole section on what the academics want, citing the journal publications, the case studies, all those things. So what is it? It's how long you need to access that knowledge. So if you can imagine, if you're in a biotech industry, a 3-year project isn't going to get you to market. That's fine. What you need is how long you need to actually access and embed that knowledge in your organisation and then take it forward. So it can be anywhere between 6 months and 3 years. The associate is actually physically delivering that project in the company is a joint recruitment. So they're actually employed by the university, but based in the company the majority of their time, which is brilliant because A, you've got the university endorsing their academic skills at the recruitment, but the company is looking at, is this sort of person that will fit in with our culture? Doesn't add to your headcount as a company, so you haven't got those sort of arguments to have with your HR department about recruitment. But you're getting the best of both worlds because they can go and knock on any other academic door in the university as a member of staff and get other little nuggets of knowledge that might be there and feed those in as the project needed. And you also get, talking about consultancy, you also get on average half a day a week of the academics' time. It's usually about 1 day a fortnight they come and spend with you in the company, unless there's something really interesting in the labs at the university, in which case the company supervisor will go up there and have a meeting there. So it is a contact sport, and it works extraordinarily well because that regularity and formality in contact. So what sort of businesses? I mean, stable companies of all sizes. So it's a rare sort of government grant that actually can be got by large companies as well as SMEs. So you've got to have the capacity to take advantage of the knowledge. That's basically the test. And there are other sorts of organisations that we have, particular, when they're not for profit. There are other things, and large public bodies, there are some restrictions on those ones, but I don't think there's anybody here in that area. So you can see the actual size of enterprises that we work with is fairly evenly spread. The under 10 employees, obviously if you're one-man band, then you're going to be taking your eye off the main business ball of trying to supervise an associate at the same time as run your business. So there are some sort of lower end things that we could talk on, but that's very much case by case basis on the smaller end of things. So it's been going 35 years or so under different guises. It is the government's best kept secret, and because we monitor it afterwards, these are real figures of companies have reported. And they're not reporting it to get their grant, remember, which a lot of other projects actually use, that you have to give an exploitation plan as part of your outcomes, otherwise you don't get your money. These are actually saying, no, we've looked at this and this is what it's doing for us. So, good return on investment for the amount of money that you'll see the companies are spending on it. And also, IP has got to be agreed up front with the university, so there's perhaps IP benefits to the university, perhaps IP benefits to the company, according to how that ends up. So those of you that are academics, why would you want to spend 1 day a fortnight with a company when you could be doing other things back at the university? We've heard about REF, it is great impact. You get on average 3 or 4 journal articles out of each KTP because the associate's very keen on getting those in there. You get wonderful real-life case studies and teaching materials and student projects. If we find a little bit of a project that the associate doesn't want to do or isn't able to do, then we'd look at student projects or master's projects, all those sort of things. The commercial relevance of what you're doing is brilliant, and also because of the personal development budget and the fact the associate is employed by the university, quite often they can get either a free of charge or much reduced rate for a master's or beginning of a PhD. So that makes an awful lot of sense because A, it's a great benefit to the associate, it helps the papers come out, but also it's, between you and me, it's some golden handcuffs on that associate who's going to become very saleable as this project goes on. It keeps them tied into the project all the way through. And you can have a special sort of KTP where it is actually a postdoc KTP. So if you've done a case studentship or if you've sponsored a PhD and you're now thinking as a business, now what? How are we going to implement this? You could do a KTP naming that person as your associate to work in the business and actually exploit the outputs for that. So it's a great continuity there. But overall, long-term strategic relationship. Companies loved the idea of engaging with universities, but this risk share thing, they're not quite sure always. KTP gives them a great process for managing that risk, but also because of it's been successful, then go on to do other things. I've got academics who are executive directors of companies, there's been spin-out companies and JVs, all sorts, there have been fellowships and chairs named after the company. So there's great things happen after the KTP because it builds that confidence in the relationship. So, who engages in KTP? We heard earlier about, there are some business-friendly academics and there are some not. And there are some universities whose approach to IP is different to others. So there's a real wide spectrum of universities that work in the KTP space. I'm personally working with about 38 different universities. So I've been doing KTP for 7 years, and I've probably seen about 120 projects from initial relationship right through to completion, all the way through. So the research intensives and the teaching universities, both very, very welcome. We don't judge the excellence of the research. What we're looking for is that match. And you may have, one sort of project, you need the very leading edge technology and research. Another area, it might be the application, and some of the teaching universities' backgrounds come from being a polytechnic or wherever, focused on a particular industry in their area. So again, they can work very well as well. Different departments, so this is very business-led. If a business comes to me and has got a strategic need for a certain sort of knowledge, I will then look for an academic or a choice of academic departments that meet that. So I've had one in theology, where a bank wanted to get into an Islamic financial market and needed to understand the theology and what the restrictions are around products in that market. So I've got one in the pipeline with philosophy, but obviously the majority of needs are in the STEM areas and in management. So you can have management process, lean engineering, those sort of things as well. So the associate, I think there's a common misconception about KTP is it's a graduate placement scheme. Because it's a joint recruitment, you specify what you need. And because of that, the majority of people have got masters at least. They've had probably a couple of years in industry, and they can come from any background. And if they're postdocs, you can pay them a little bit extra. There's some more grant there for taking on postdocs, which obviously makes it attractive to postdocs as well. What's in it for them? Obviously, it's quite a high-pressured job. It's enabling to do something really strategic in a company that they wouldn't be normally allowed to do at their stage in their career because they've got the support of the process and the academic expertise there. So it's a great kickstart to a very high-flying career. There's over 1,000 associates in place. I now am in the happy situation where they're coming back as managing directors and technical directors of companies to me and saying, Jan, we'd like to do our own KTP now. So they really should be the business leaders of tomorrow and our technology experts. They have money for personal development, they have 10% of their time for personal development, and they've got this opportunity to do a higher degree. So it's terrific, if you know people that fit that area, get them to go onto our website and look out for opportunities, and especially the STEM students. We're especially looking for those. Also, we did them coach and mentoring, and we give them training, and they've got an opportunity to do a diploma in management. So lots of added benefits for them. What are we looking for? Well, as I said earlier, I'm your gatekeeper, so you don't need to worry too much about the criteria, and these will, it is business-led, and if you've got a project, I can give you a fairly quick answer whether or not it's likely to be a good KTP. I'm also the reviewer for other people's projects, so I know exactly what's needed to... it isn't a matter of getting approved, it's a matter of actually putting your collaboration agreement together so that it actually is a successful project. Over 86% of KTPs that complete exceed or meet their original objectives. When you think how difficult some of those actually were, that is a terrific achievement. So what's in the money? Companies do have to pay for it. So with the different costing methods of different universities, I can't give you an absolute concrete figure, but on average, for one associate, for 1 year, it costs a total of 60,000, not to the company. Okay, the company, if they're an SME, will pick up around a third of that, so we're talking 20,000. And what do you get for that? You're getting all the employment costs of the associate, you're getting their personal development budget, you're getting half a day a week of a leading academic's time as a consultant, you're getting some money for travel, you're getting some money for consumables. So it's a pretty good deal. If you just want to get your hands on a good new graduate, you're probably best just going and doing that. But if actually you want that structured project and you need the support of the university, it makes terrific sense. Large companies will be paying half of that, so around 25k. It's a little bit more in London, and as I said, a little bit more if you've got a postdoc. TSB lead it, so I'm a consultant to them, but it draws on funding from all the research councils, devolved administrations, and also some of the new government departments are also putting money on it. So usually it is business-led, so it doesn't matter what your business problem is, what your knowledge gap is, we'll put it towards KTP. But from time to time, the TSB and other departments announce these themed things. So at the moment, we have one in offshore renewables. We've just closed one on parallel computing. So occasionally there will be a themed call as well. But don't worry, as I think Gerald said at the beginning, we have enviably a lot of funding that we wish to commit for good projects. So even if it doesn't meet one of our themed areas, it will get funded if it meets the need for a knowledge transfer partnership. So that's the key message. These are the sort of figures, so I say large amount. And what I will do is I will also try to link in your project to other projects that are related. So I keep very well away from making sure you're not competitors, but I also will try and add some value in linking you into other companies. So yesterday I was in a company, we're celebrating a product launch through the KTP. They're saying next we want to actually go into this and sentiment mining and looking at social media. And I said, 2 streets away I've got a company that just finished a KTP in that area. I don't know if you compete. Here's their website. I can broker you talking to each other to see there's some common ground there. So what companies say? This is an old company in the north of Ireland that actually hadn't done any innovation. For years they'd carried on doing the same things. They now have transformed. They're spectacularly successful, and they're now going on to do other things with universities. But thinking about the projects that I've worked with in your space, there's been one with E2V, which was the modelling of magnetrons, which gave a new modelling method. They had modelling for klystrons, but they needed to be able to model the magnetrons, so it speeded up their new product development. And also, because of the way they did the software and the interface for the software, it meant their lower capability or their newer engineers could start doing the modelling rather than having to have it just at their top-end senior engineers. I've also had one, I've got one at the moment, which is around optical processing of images for counting. So a mechanical counting machine company have decided they want to go into optics to count the very difficult materials. And people that manufacture banknotes get a bit funny if you get it wrong. So actually applying what we heard in the Cambridge talk, some Bayesian theory, into the algorithms for processing that. They're 2 years in, They started off by just tweaking the existing machines to see if they could get some improvement there. They've already solved the first one of those. So we try and get some quick wins early on, but now they're going on to the really difficult stuff that nobody can count, and they're having tremendous success with that. And there's also been one with Navtech around radar sensors. So they launched 3 new products. They sorted out their manufacturing and cost of manufacturing in parallel with the KTP was part of it. And they've made new markets, 500k of turnover just during the KTP. So I think that's all. I'm going to be around the rest of the day. So if you want to, come and spend 5 minutes with me saying, I'd like to know if this would be something possible, or do you know an academic in this area? If I don't, I will, find you somebody, one of my colleagues that covers another area that does. I cover East Anglia and London, so any companies or universities in those regions. I don't cover UCL or Imperial, but I have just taken on responsibility for Cambridge, so I'm beginning to get to know you a little bit better, so I look forward to doing that. Thank you so much for listening.